Welcome back to the Truest Fan Blueprint. Rob Brown here. I want you to know that this is an Encore edition of the Truest Fan Blueprint because we know that at this time of year, many members of our audience, many people just like you, want to make sure that you finish the year as strongly as possible. And a few months back, we recorded just such an episode. So we want to encourage you to re-listen to this episode if you listened to it before, or listen for the first time now, because we want to make sure that as you finish this year strongly, you are also preparing to be or to make 2024 as successful as it can possibly be. And I also want to tell you to be on the lookout. Another reason for this break in our new podcasts is we're adding a brand new service to the Truest Fan coaching menu. And we're going to launch that next week, and you'll hear about it during our next episode of the Truest Fan Blueprint. So that's enough for now. Enjoy the Encore edition of the podcast, and we will talk to you next week.
Ask yourself, is that resource, is that activity that you undertook still the thing that's capable of taking you over the top? And if it is, right, build that into your action plan and marry that up with those KPIs that you're going after.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if you don't have an experience in what inputs need to go into it, go find a good book on it. Learn from somebody else's experience, and that will help you along the way and short circuit, if you will.
Welcome back to the Truest Fan Blueprint. Rob Brown here, along with Phil Calandra. Phil, welcome to a new episode.
Hey, Rob. Great to be here. I'm really excited about this episode.
Yes, I am too. If our listeners hear some cynicism in our voices, it's only because we've been having major technological issues. But I think we're
good to go. We're launching now.
Yeah. In fact, last week in the episode, we talked about roadblocks, making the most of them, having a good, positive mindset to get through them. So maybe this is God's way of seeing if we really meant what we said about roadblocks.
We persevere.
For sure. But anyway, I'm excited about this topic today because as we're recording, we're coming up on the fourth quarter of the year. And
wow.
Yeah.
Hard to believe.
Yes, it is. And this is one of my favorite times of the year as a coach, because as I talk to some of my clients or people that I'm considering working with me, the big question is, how are you doing towards your goals that you set out for at the beginning of the year? And, there are kind of three general states that you can be in, and you can be killing it, which I hope everybody that's listening to this is doing. And you can just make sure you just keep building on that momentum so your year finishes as strong as it possibly can. But you could be just kind of doing okay, keeping in line with your goals, so feeling good about things, but you maybe have a little doubt. Are you going to be able to pull it off for the end of the year? Or you could be behind your goal and you're thinking this is the time of year that you should throw out your goals. And Phil and I are here to tell you that this is the period. You have the power to rescue your year. And truly, you can make a great year greater, a good year better, and a lousy year getting it right back on track. And that's what we really want to focus on today. Ever run into that before, Phil?
Oh, all the time. And it's, the word that you used in there somewhere along the way was momentum. So whether you're killing it, you're in midstream, middle of the road, or you're bombing, I think it really just boils down to the momentum that you choose to begin to build if that's what you need to be doing. And that drives back to what I think is so critical in the success habits that we talk about is the mindset. You have to have the right mindset going into this fourth quarter if you're behind, because it just means you have to start thinking about things a little bit differently. And that's challenging. It's hard to do that, but it's the mindset that's what's going to carry this forward. It's the only way you're going to be able to do it.
Well, not the only way, Phil, because we're actually going to talk more strategically. But I agree with what you're saying. Mindset is important, because if you're behind and you think you can't get caught up, if you think you can't get caught up, you probably will not get caught up unless you get lucky. But we have a tool that we use with our clients when we're helping them do their planning, whether it's starting out with their long-term dreams and pulling it back to what they want to do this year, and more specifically, what we want to talk about today is what you want to do this quarter, or we call it sprints. What do you want to accomplish over the next 90 days relates back to those other goals. And we do that through a tool that we call the Truest Fan Action Plan. And it's a way that we work with folks to say, okay, these are the most important things for me this quarter to get towards where I want to be, to maybe making up that gap if there is one in terms of your performance so far this year. This could be business performance, but it could also be personal performance, or things in life that you haven't accomplished that you really want to catch up on. But the mindset goes with the process. You've got to have a process. You can't just hope your way into good luck by having a good mindset. It has to connect to a plan.
Yeah, when you think about the process, or you think about the action steps, the Truest Fan Action Plan is really all about actionable items that's going to get you to the finish line. And I'm often reminded of something that I've heard many times is, what gets measured gets done. So one place that you can start here as we come to the close of the third and into the fourth quarter is, where are your metrics? We call those KPIs, key performance indicators. Whatever metrics you use, and hopefully you have some metrics that you're tracking, you can then go back to those metrics, those KPIs, and say, well, if it's the sales endeavor, I didn't have enough initial calls. I didn't have enough discovery meetings. I didn't ask appropriately for the referrals, or whatever it may be. But what gets measured gets done. So start there and begin to think about what you're going to have. What are the inputs you're going to have to put in that are different from what you've been doing? That's the point, I think, of the action plan.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's to understand what those inputs are. It's not to say, okay, I'm not on track, so I'm going to do like 10,000 different things, which are physically impossible to do. Is saying, what are the 1, 2, 3 things based on those metrics with that positive mindset that I can set about doing. And I know if I do them day in, day out, week in and week out, because it does flow towards my plan, that's going to show results, and it's going to show results quickly most often. Because a lot of times when we fall behind, it's not because we couldn't do what we thought we wanted to do or thought that we could do. It's because we fell back on our routines and our habits and our plan, and we ignored it.
Yeah, and that goes in all areas of our life. That doesn't only apply in our businesses or in our vocations, but if you fell behind on your diet plan because you went to the beach or you went on vacation, I know that tends to happen to me. If I get out of my routine, then I tend to slip back in some of the habits that I try to consciously procure for myself: the diet, the exercise regimen, the routine, the things that we do, and the natural course of the lifestyle that we build for ourselves. And when you fall out of that, whether it's a vacation or, something that's disruptive, that's the way life goes. But you have to be disciplined. I call it the 3 Ds: desire, determination, and discipline, right? You've heard me say this before. Number 1, you have to have the desire to hit the goal. Number 2, you have to have the discipline to do what needs to be done over and over and over. That's discipline, and then determination, which is when it gets hard, you dig down deeper and you have that determination to see it through. So everybody's going to go through it, and everybody's going to have to experience it in their own way. And that's where I go back to the mindset will be a key part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that makes our views of how we look at things interesting, Phil, is we both believe in the mindset part. We both believe in the process part. But if anything, maybe you get accused of being like the best cheerleader, the one with the greatest aptitude for wanting to help with the mindset piece. And I would say, but wait, we've got to make sure we've got the process in there. And that's why we created the Truest Fan action plan, is because it allows you to combine those things. You know, I was talking with a client a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about where their year was going because they were having a major disruption because of some difficulties they were having with members of their team. And that's another way to, a great reason to sometimes fall behind on your goals and where you want to be. And what we had to do is we had to look back at the sprint, the action plan that we had set up for the last quarter, identify those things that didn't get done because of the time that was being sucked up with this crazy team issue, and say, you know, we don't really actually need to do anything differently than we planned. We just need to recommit for this last section of the year to those 4 or 5 things that he wanted to do in his business. Or actually, it wasn't 4 or 5. It was just 2 things he wanted to do in his business that related to making sure that he was having more conversations that would enable him to upgrade the relationships that he has with some of his smaller client relationships to make sure they really fit his business. But he also had, you know, a couple of personal things that had fallen by the wayside too. He had made a commitment in the last sprint to take off more time and spend it with his family, because that was just regenerating for him. And we've plugged that right back into his sprint for the quarter too. So that action plan is critical for saying, okay, what do we need to do that's going to get us back on track if we've fallen off track? And it can help us realize where the shortfalls came into play.
Certainly. And I think when you use what we call TFAP, Truest Fan Action Plan, or whatever tool, whatever resources you have, I think it's critical for me to always think about the inputs, the action steps, the actual things, or the disciplines that I'm going to undertake, and recognize it now at this point in the year. You can only control the inputs. To a large extent, we can't control outcomes, right? The outcomes are a byproduct of things that are generally out of our control. Take the stock market, for example. I can control the input, which is I save $1,000 a month. I have absolutely no control over the outcome December 31st if the market went up or down. And there's so many other, you could just go through any number of areas of life where you can only control the inputs. That's your action plan. You cannot control all the outcomes, and just accept that and continue to build and dig and be determined, be disciplined. And, you know, I am an optimist. Optimism is the only realism. So I'm always not always, but I tend to look at the brighter side of life, I guess.
Yeah. Me too. But with a grain of put that into a system.
That's experience.
Yes. But, and that's, because ultimately, as Truest fans, we're cheerleading. We're as we often say, rooting for the success of those that we encounter through this podcast or through the other work that we do. And Phil, as you were describing some of the importances of this mindset and attaching it to success habits and numbers and metrics, one of the situations that I recall, I love stories, and I love it sometimes when what I do in my work spills over into some of the causes and the other things that I care about. And I can remember a few years ago, about halfway through the year, the leader of a fundraising committee that I was on to build a building for an outreach center said, we're not going to make our goals. I think I need to step aside. But we had to get things done by the end of the year. And I was asked to step in because I actually like raising money for charities or for causes that I care about. And I said, well, let's just keep the plan going. So I tried to keep the plan going of the person that I was succeeding. And honestly, we kept getting similar results. Nothing really good happened in the third quarter, but we had to hit our numbers by the end of the fourth quarter. So I said, let's throw that all away. Let's create an action plan where we specifically name who is going to call how many people and who those people are going to be and what we're going to ask them for, and make sure that all of our numbers add up to the real possibility of hitting our goal. And obviously I wouldn't tell this story if it wasn't a success, but it was a huge success. We went well past our goal, but it was because we added an action plan, action steps, key performance indicators to that opportunity to serve our community, and it worked out really well. And I think that's the same thing as we're talking about with making sure, whether you're thinking about your business or your life and you feel like you're behind and 2023 isn't going to be the year that you want it to be, it's not too late. You just have to have a process for stepping into it.
Yeah, and I think for most people, they tend to make the process too difficult. Don't overthink it. Focus on the key KPIs, the key action steps, the key inputs. And for many of us, it is the things or the action steps that we've done before. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We talked in the previous podcast about our passion, you and I, the passion for reading. So if you don't have an experience in what inputs need to go into it, go find a good book on it. Learn from somebody else's experience, and that will help you along the way and short circuit, if you will. We don't want to make this harder than it is. Obviously, if you're having a struggle this year, it maybe has been a little bit tougher than you thought. Let's make it easier and focus on the key performance indicators, the key performance inputs, using the action plan methodology to get you from where we are. And where we are is where we are. I have to remind myself of this because I tend to be my biggest critic. Don't beat yourself up over it. You are where you are, but that doesn't mean you have to stay where you are. You can move forward, and if that finish line or whatever the goal is for 2023, you got the time. Don't kill yourself or beat yourself up over the head. Look at the mirror and just tell yourself you're a wonderful soul and go for it.
Yeah. There's no reason to look back. There's no reason to give yourself more of a hard time just because you aren't going where you want to go. And I think one of the things that I constantly do when I find somebody in this situation and we're trying to catch up, the question I always ask is, if you have a goal in mind and you've been successful in achieving that goal before, and most of the people that we work with have a large degree of success.
Sure.
So because, through their experiences through the years, is what's worked for you before. So instead of adding something brand new that you've never tried to your action plan, what's worked for you before? And ask yourself, is that tool, is that resource, is that activity that you undertook still the thing that's capable of taking you over the top? And if it is, build that into your action plan and marry that up with those KPIs that you're going after.
100%. I agree.
All right, Phil, I think it's probably time to land the plane on this podcast. So as always, we want to make sure that we give you a specific action step. So think about it. Where are you so far this year? And where do you want to go? And how confident are you that you're going to be able to get there? And whether you're confident or not, what you want to do is make sure that you have confidence in yourself, put behind any failure that you might be feeling, and write down, what are the 2 or 3 things that I can do that are going to allow me to achieve whatever it is you set out to do, and do it in terms of actions and things that you can work on that will produce the result. Don't artificially just write down what you hope the result will be. It has to be tied together. And if you want to do that using the Truest Fan action plan, you can go to the link in the show notes, and you can just click the button and say, I'd like a copy of the Truest Fan action plan, and we'll send one straight out to you. If you have some other planning tool that you prefer or think has worked in the past, use that. But you can also do it on a sticky note, because the action plan items that you need to work on.
Don't overcomplicate this.
Yeah, it shouldn't take a ton of space. You just need to call them out. You need to name them. Phil, anything else you want to add here before we?
No, I was just going to say, don't overcomplicate things. Go on to the show notes, get the Truest Fan action plan, and get going. There's still plenty of time to have a miraculous comeback or keep building. And if you're already killing it in 2023, then just think how much further ahead you'll be in 2024. And I can't believe we're already talking about that, the new year. But get it done, guys and gals. That's exciting.
It'll be here before you know it. And so, as always, we want you to know that we're rooting for your success, and we'd ask that as soon as you're done listening, share this podcast with somebody else, because I'm sure there are other people who could use the same kind of advice that you've been listening to today. Thanks a bunch, and we'll talk to you next week.